Welcome back, everybody, to Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain, where we talk about the business of fashion. I'm really excited to have Travis as a guest on our podcast. Travis, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Travis. I'm 20 years old. I go to FIT. I'm a fashion student.
Cool. So, how far along are you in your studies?
So I'm in my second year. So I should be getting my associates right now. I think I'll continue on to get my bachelor's for one of the majors. But we'll see, just seeing how it goes.
So, where do you see yourself? Like, do you want to be a independent fashion designer? Do you want to work for a big fashion house? What's your hopes and dreams?
My mom is Tracy Deason, which she's already a fashion designer herself. Just like most college students, I'm not 100% sure yet what I what my path would be, but it's definitely along the lines of fashion. So my course right now that I'm taking is advertising and marketing communications. So it's a bit more on like the business side, like the advertising. Gotta make money somehow.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's interesting. I think a lot of not only fashion designers but businesses in general. Sometimes it's fairly easy to get into the industry. Let's say you're a realtor or whatever the case may be, or even a fashion designer. But how do you market yourself once you have the skills to have a business? So, what are some of the takeaways that you might be able to share with us that you're learning at FIT as far as marketing?
I would say with a lot of the brands out there, a lot of the really expensive brands, it really doesn't take a lot to make the products that they're making. It's more if they're selling the name and the story. The story really matters a lot, especially with advertising. You're trying to reel people in. You're trying to give them a reason to care, to relate. So that's one of the things that I'm like learning right now is how do you hold on to that attention that people give you, that impression, they always say like the first impressions matter, like always matter a lot, and those like few seconds of you meeting someone for the first time or seeing something, it's like how do you make use of those people's first few seconds, if you even know what I mean.
No, I definitely do. It's interesting too because obviously I'm 61 years old, much older than you, but just kind of studying the different social media platforms, and TikTok seemed to be like that you know, quick fix type of thing. And then YouTube maybe is a little bit more long form. And then podcast, people realize when they're sitting down to listen to a podcast, they're going to give it a lot more time and attention. So as an emerging designer and going back to storytelling, back when I was younger, unless you were on, a major network, ABC, NBC, CBS, or in a major magazine publication like Vogue or Cosmopolitan, that was really the only way you could reach your audience. But now with social media, how do you? It's easier to reach out to people, but then how do you cut through all the noise?
I'd say it's easier to stand out now because like back then, since like without like the platforms like TikTok and all that, you don't really know what's going on like most of the time. But with like TikTok and all these platforms, you kind of see what everyone is already doing, so it's kind of easier to find. Well, that's both the challenge and the easy part about it, that you gotta find how you can be different just from observing. You've got to be an audience as well. I'd say that's the biggest way to cut through all the noise. Be an audience to everyone and see what other people aren't doing and try to do something different.
That makes a lot of sense. So as far as FIT, are you taking the full curriculum? I'm not really that familiar with the program, but is there like marketing and then there's fashion designing and manufacturing? I mean, are you taking the whole gambit of classes?
S- So with the way it works is that well, forgive me if I didn't understand the question, but the way it works is that you could take a 2-year program to get your associates for any like, major, and you can take another 2 years of a different kind of major, say, because fashion business and also like fashion design are two different things. You could take two and two, and it would count as like for you. You can get your bachelor's just from getting the two and two.
No,
If I
no, no. That totally makes sense. So the program you're in now, is it the focus is on the business and the marketing side of it?
Yeah, and I'm hoping that like for the next 2 years, or once I graduate from this, I'll take something like fashion business marketing or fashion design. I'm not quite sure yet, but a lot of people do obviously go to FIT for fashion design. So
That's cool. So what's that like? I mean, as far as the other students, are the classroom size is pretty big, and what's your day like in school?
I guess it would be pretty different for me since I'm a commuter. A lot of the students in FIT aren't actually from New York. Most most students come from different states, even international students. I guess it must be that much of a hot commodity to be
Hmm.
in that college. Um, it's nothing too crazy for me. At least my first and second year, I just go to class, and then usually I go straight home. But usually they say that there's a lot of like resources. There's a lot more to do in college campuses. You should stay. I mean, I think people should stay in their college more and find something to do because there's a lot of opportunity is in there. You just need to like look for them.
No, definitely. I've read or I've heard from other people that not only the value when you go to college to get an education, but it's the relationships within the schools. And then, is the alumni available to you? Like people have come to school and now they have these really great careers. Is there opportunities to intern for some of these alumni?
Actually, there is, and some professors. Well, you've really got to do your research when it comes to like professors, but they do say that for a lot of the courses, especially the senior one, the f- on the on the more fourth year like classes, the more advanced like senior classes, there are professors that do offer some sort of like internships, some sort of opportunity. So it's really about just doing your homework. Like you
Yeah,
got to do your research, you know.
definitely, definitely. So, you and I have been kind of going back and forth for a while, trying to book this interview. And my understanding is you helped out at New York Fashion Week this year. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, it was really fun. So my mom works with Richie Rich. Are you familiar with Richie Rich?
A little bit. I should probably know more, but
So my mom obviously knows more about it, but from what I understand, Richie Rich is this designer were who did the designs for the Sex in the City.
okay.
He was the designer, and that's what he became known for because Sex in the City is was a really huge. Like
Hmm.
I think it still is even. I think I'm allowed to talk about it a bit more now. So they had a collaboration with Care Bears, like the company,
Hmm.
given the rights to it, and it's to celebrate their 40th like anniversary, like 40th or 50. I could have
Okay.
mistaken.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know how old Care Bears actually is, but
Mhm.
it's for that. It's very official, and they took a very modern, a very modern and street like look into like bringing it and like putting the signature of Care Bears into it. So it's not like just clothes for like little kids or something. It's actually like anyone could wear it. They gave like a more mature look to it as well, so that anyone could enjoy it. It was like really fun, and it was more of just an internship for me. So I wasn't really one of the main people for that, but I was in the backstage and I did help create one of the pieces, which was really, really fun. It's really cool to see like one of your works being being in a runway. And I was told, actually no, not wasn't until I saw that there were really important people in that fashion show. There were like the New York Times was there, Vogue was there. It was really official. And as in terms for the show itself, like the backstage, it gets really chaotic. You like people never really think about how in fashion shows what really goes on in the backstage. So I would say there's a common misconception when people see fashion shows, they think they're seeing a finished product that is ready to sell. But the reality is it's the things you see in a fashion, those are like the prototype. Those are like unfinished, and but they are just made to look as perfect as they can be for the time being. It's like for the show. Yeah, it's like in a TV show, like you add special effects to it, even though it's not actually there. So I'd say it's really cool how how like some of the people I see backstage, how good they are at improvising, because you never know like the last minute things that like, oh, some things like break, like a garment gets ripped and someone needs to like sew it like real quick. You
Oh,
have like minutes before the show. So it was really really fun.
that's cool. It's a lot like the car industry when you talk about like prototypes. Actually, I interviewed your mom a while back, and that was really, really cool too. And it's one of my most watched, listened to podcasts. So it's really cool. She's an educator there and a fashion designer. One of the things that's interesting, I produced Santa Fe Fashion Week and getting to see like kind of the craziness, like you said, that goes on behind the scenes. And sometimes I have to talk to the models before the shows because in the past there's so much going on that the models will, they're doing quick changes, and sometimes they don't respect the clothing and the garments as much as they should. And I'm like, whoa, 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 you got to slow down because you're going to tear something. But it's interesting at that the capacity of the shows you're doing, in New York, must be really intense. After doing that, do you enjoy the production side of it? Do you ever see yourself maybe being more on the production side of the shows? Is that something you enjoyed?
You know, at at first I was like I wasn't very sure if I wanted to like do it because it's an internship and it was a cool opportunity, but I underestimated how much I realized I was gonna get from it because at first I was like, oh, like
Mhm.
it's a lot of work. I'm not being paid for it, but it's not. You don't always get paid with money. You know, so I would definitely. One of the things that I wish I did, I wish I had more time. I wish I was more involved, because in that show, I had a little piece of like one of the clothes, like one of the designs there. I had like a garment that was there, but it wasn't the whole thing. It was just a piece of it. And now I had to wish like, oh, if I had more time, maybe I could have made a whole look that was just by me. It's kind of a crazy opportunity being a part of something like that. And
You bring up an amazing point. It's interesting that so many times that we attach money to work. It's like, oh my God, they have me doing all this work and they're not paying for them for it, and forget about it. And I could see like if it's like mowing lawn or something like that. It's like I don't need to be mowing your lawn for free, but an opportunity to work like at New York Fashion Week. I mean, how many people would love that? And if they were to pay you, how much could they, how much could they pay you in the first place? But the opportunities and the networking. So it's awesome that you took it, that you kind of said, all right, they're not paying me, but I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of this opportunity.
absolutely.
That's very cool. So when do you help your mom out with marketing? She says she leans on you sometimes for marketing ideas. Do you kind of help your mom out a little bit with that?
I would say yes. Um, Not that she really needs the help though. Um,
Maybe not so much help, but guidance maybe, or with
yeah,
social media, just on
I
those
think
different concepts.
more on the social media side, because I'd say I would know a lot about this the social media. It's kind of easier. It's kind of easier for me to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of times too, we're so busy running our businesses that it just seems like, I mean, it's almost like an essential evil that we have to kind of get our hands dirty and do the whole social media thing. But if you're just behind a curtain making clothing and stuff like that, but not getting your story out, there's a lot of missed opportunity.
Very.
So one of the things I'm working on is, I'd like to get your thoughts. And again, you just did New York Fashion Week, but a concept I've been working on is Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain, or just Fashion Behind the Curtain concepts. excuse me, where it's more of an immersive event. So rather than your typical runway show where kind of the cool kids, which you got to see that, are kind of like behind the curtain with all the hustle and bustle. And then everybody else, like, and you kind of mentioned this too, is on the other side of the curtain and they're watching this fashion go up and down the runway, but they don't realize like these are prototypes and they're not really merged in the process. So what I want to do is bring the back of the house to the front of the house so the guests would walk into this space and the show would happen at ground level, if you will. So the models would come out, they're already stylized. They would happen in this space, not elevated on a runway. And then they'd go over to, let's see, where the photographers are doing like their lookbooks. But as a guest, you could walk over and say, oh, that's the fashion. And then you could go over and see the photography getting done. And I kind of compare it to like, if you ever been to an art gallery, you don't bring the art to you. You walk around and you look at the art and you discuss the art with whoever you're with. And you might like some of the art, not like the art. Where I feel like fashion is wearable art. And so I think this thing where people just going up and down the runway, it's I think it's kind of like passe a bit, that's already been done for such a long time. Any thoughts on that from being, because I'm sure you've said now you've had an opportunity to be in the back of the house, and I imagine you've seen shows in the front of the house. Could you see a value of where maybe the guests would enjoy seeing more of what the chaos maybe or what goes on?
It's like, think of it like when you see someone do a card trick, and you see any type of magic, and you see how they actually do it. I mean, they always say like it's just magic, but when you actually see they do it, I don't think people become less interested. In fact, I think people become more interested, like, oh, that's how the illusion, that's how the magic was made. So I think a bit more on the backstage, and I think people would appreciate the looks more, because when you see a finished product, you don't ever really think about what it had to go through in order for it to become that. So I actually think there is merit, and in understanding what really goes on besides, outside of what's being shown. I I think it definitely adds a lot of value to the look. I don't think it ruins the magic in any type of way. I think it makes it better.
I agree. It's interesting because again, unless you're in the industry and you've been in the back of the house, the people in the front of the house really don't realize what goes on. I mean, obviously, you still need a true back house because models getting changed and stuff like that. But I just think the transformation and then allowing people, it's almost like if, I'm sure you've probably been involved in photo shoots and stuff like that. And when you look at the finished product, be it on TikTok or Instagram, whatever the finished photo, you don't realize some of the work that goes on behind the scenes. And I kind of like the photographers and stylists that actually show the behind the scenes on TikTok. Is like, yeah, this, we found a location and we had to get a stylist and this, and again, I think it goes back to what you talked about earlier about storytelling, because that's such a huge part of the story is, you know, what it took to actually make the model and the clothing and bring it all together to where it looks so amazing. For people that want to go to fashion school, be it FIT or community school, something like that, to learn fashion, fashion is obviously such a difficult industry. It's probably one of the toughest industries out there. I have a friend that has an energy drink, and even that's a tough industry to break into. And he's only got 3 SKUs, and you don't have to come up with a different flavor every season. Where in fashion, you're constantly, you're competing with fast fashion, and there's a lot of cost, there's a lot of waste. So, what advice would you give to people that want to pursue that dream of becoming a fashion designer, or get in or work in the fashion industry, I should say?
Well, might sound a little generic, but a lot of people have a lot of talents out there that aren't being realized because, one, maybe they're not doing it enough, or they're not meeting other people with similar interests that could help them get seen better. I've seen, like, it's like seeing a lot of musicians. Like, you ever heard like a really good song, but it's not very known enough, and you would always think to yourself like, oh, they should be known more. Like, you really gotta sell yourself, and you really gotta find other people with with similar interests to you. So I guess in other words, it's just networking, because and then there's always, even just someone that knows a little bit about something that you're interested in that you didn't know is very useful, because they're always like someone's gonna know one person and one person's gonna know this, and then next thing you know, you're like the next big thing already, because you know all of these people that can help you find these opportunities. And a lot of people are willing to accept your work, like what you do, as payment. A lot of people don't even ask for money. They just want to just want to see what you do. I think with for me, I'm a little bit on the luckier side because of my own mom. So I get to have a lot more opportunities. But you don't need your mom to be a, a fashion designer. There's always ways to find like very important people. Just like before I was in FIT, I was in a high school. I was in a high school, and it was called New Design High. It's this high school in the city. It's a fashion high school, and it was a really cool opportunity to be in that school, because you would do this thing every end of the year, that you would have a fashion show in like the rooftop of the school, and
Mhm.
it's required. It's like a project. You're graded for it, but I learned so much from that, and I didn't have to pay. I didn't have to. It's just my school. So just looking in the right places would definitely do you and do you a lot, and to not lose motivation, because I think a lot of people do want to do something, but they're always like, oh, I don't. It doesn't make any money, or I don't know anyone. It's always there. You're just gonna look in the right places.
No, I think what's interesting too is talking about your mom. It's interesting because you come from a creative family, so you going down a creative path as far as career wise, she's very open to it. But a lot of people like, oh, let's say your parents have like call it a real job or whatever, work banker or whatever, works at a bank, and so their son or daughter might go, oh, I want to be a fashion designer, and they're going to be like, oh, you should get a real job. And I know even when I was younger and I was going to college, I really was into photography back then, and that's back when we used dark rooms and film, and that wasn't like a real job, so I think it's cool that you come from a creative family. I think also like families that are entrepreneurs, if their kids want to go on and become an entrepreneur, they're more embracing of that because that they kind of get it. So I think that kind of is a little bit helpful. But no, I think that's really really great advice. When you're trying to do something, and like you said, you got to stay motivated and kind of stick to it, because there's oftentimes people will try to talk you out of it. And if you're the kind of person that is looking for someone to talk you out of it, then it's easy to listen to them like, oh, I don't think I should do this. And then their friend's like, yeah, you're probably right. That's kind of crazy to want to be a fashion designer or chef or whatever. So it's really easy to find people that will kind of push you out of doing what you really want to do. And even now, like I said, I'm 61 years old. And when I was younger, I really enjoyed photography and fashion photography. And I did go down the path of having a real job as a stockbroker most of my career. But now I'll get to come around full circle and do more creative stuff like produce fashion shows and create fashion blogs and stuff like that. So recently I had a teacher reach out to me. She's in El Paso and she teaches a fashion design program. And she saw a lot of negative comments, not about her school necessarily, but other fashion schools where people are posting on social media that they went to fashion school and they didn't feel like they really got anything out of it. They were really bashing on fashion schools. So she went down this rabbit hole of defending these teachers. She was just commenting on people's things. So she reached out to me and she's like, "Can I be on your podcast?" She wants to defend
Mhm.
fashion schools and fashion teachers and stuff like that. So what's your thoughts on that? Are you enjoying the program at FIT? Would you like to kind of address what her concerns are about what students are saying about, or do you see similar posts on social media?
So I actually knew some like one of my mentors that I had in a fashion competition I did before. She herself owned this. She runs this whole fashion school as well. Like she has her own studio. Like people enroll in her classes as well. And and I think about certain people that think about it that way, and I never realized that people really look down on that because first of all, even if you're not really into fashion like that, we still all wear like clothes. I think in the end of the day, if you really don't want to get involved in the creatives, it's still very practical. It's like cars, so I guess like a lot of people aren't really into like the flashy stuff, but at the end of the day, a lot of cars are people like cars for a reason because
Mhm.
there's a use for it, and it's finding a sort of like self-expression. I'm really surprised that a lot of people think about it that way in terms of the people not finding a use for it. I think we live in a generation where there's about a market for about anything. If you really want to think practically, I think there is a way to monetize everything. So I don't really think it's it's a useless. Maybe it's on the harder end to monetize, but it's still there. And I think the people that say that they're either not into fashion or maybe they had an experience, but with the skills you're given, it's not enough. You really gotta look for the opportunities yourselves, which is also the hard part. But it doesn't that go for anything? Like
Yeah.
think about any other like course in college, right? You get like a business course, you get like an advertising course, or hell, even like a computer science degree. You can see these people that graduate from these and they don't have a job that has to do with their that has to do with their major. So I think it's just the work about finding the opportunity for it. It's about the same as any other thing.
Yeah.
Even I think even like medical degrees, like obviously it's a bit easier because you have the skill. Like maybe they'll take you in more, but you'll see a lot of these graduated like med students, and they don't work in med. So you could always it can always be messed up, but it can also be done right. And I think it deserves the respect. If there's a market for it and there's a need for it, there's always there's always a way.
No, that's well said. And then go back to the teacher that was kind of defending the honor of others, teachers. Do you feel like obviously you're still in school, so do you feel like you're getting a lot of value out of going to FIT?
I do. I do feel the value. First of all, I feel very well. Maybe I say this because I'm still young, but I do like being productive. I do like the certain skill sets I'm learning. I don't know what to do with it yet, and I certainly am not completely 100% certain about what I'll do next. But as a student, I do see a lot of value. I do think it is worth it, and also I've met a lot of like older students that's been there for a while, and I find them very inspiring. Like people with fashion businesses or their own clothes line. Like they would tell me they live in their own like apartment by themselves. Like, they would live in an apartment like in Bushwick
Mhm.
somewhere, and I would ask them like, "Oh, what do you work in?" And I make my clothes. People pay me to make clothes for them. I get like 300, 500 a commission.
Mhm.
So these are real life examples of people making use of it, like 20, like 23, like like adults, like
Yeah.
making money, making this their actual career. If it's been done by the other person, it can definitely be done by you and me. So
Well, Travis, I think you bring up a lot of great information, and I'm really so glad that you're a guest on Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain. If you work in the fashion industry and would like to be a guest on Santa Fe Fashion Week, Fashion Behind the Curtain, please reach out. We'd love to have you on as a guest. Again, Travis, thank you so much, and give your mom my best, will you please?
of course.